always have to like him,
but you have to respect him.
The Roy Green Show continues.
The Roy Green Show continues on the Chorus Radio Network.
Final weekend, 2017. Roy Green Show, Chorus Radio Network. 2014, a video was released. And this is going to disturb some people, but I'm going to tell you what it is because it's relevant to what we're talking about. It showed the beheading of an American aid worker, Peter Kassig. He, along with 16 Syrian soldiers, were beheaded. And Jihadi John, who was the voice, the masked voice of ISIS, looked at the camera and said, "Here we are, burning the first American crusader in Dabiq, eagerly waiting for the remainder of your armies to arrive." That was the attitude, that was the objective, and remains the objective of ISIS. They may have lost their territory, but they are still a force, and they are still a philosophical entity that many people identify with, including individuals who left this country and traveled overseas, Syria more than likely, by way of Turkey, and joined ISIS, swore an oath of allegiance to ISIS, spent time with ISIS, participated with ISIS, who knows what they did. But we remember what we saw on television, and we remember what we were told, and we remember what ISIS did. So now these individuals are coming home. They're coming home to Canada. They're trying to get home to other countries. Some of the other countries like the United States, France, Australia, the UK have special forces in the Middle East. And their objective and their mission is to intercept their foreign nationals their nationals who became ISIS members and kill them before they can get back to those countries. And the SAS, Britain's elite special forces unit, were told, this is the most important mission in your 75-year history, the regiment's 75-year history. As far as Canada is concerned, those who are returning to this country, ISIS members, our Prime Minister, Mr. Justin Trudeau, has made the statement that these individuals could become extraordinary voices for Canada, positive voices for Canada, and I suspect he's thinking about ending or working toward de-radicalizing individuals who are radicalized. It's quite a jump to assume that first of all, they're going to participate, and B, they'll have any idea how to do it. And C, why would you take the Muslim community out of it? While the rest of the world is looking to put these individuals, their individuals who joined ISIS, in prison or kill them, look at what the Americans, the French, the Australians, and the Brits are doing. Our Prime Minister says there could be extraordinary voices for this country. It's outrageous. It is absolutely outrageous. We're joined on the program by Raheel Raza, public speaker, consultant for interfaith and intercultural diversity. She's an outspoken advocate for gender equality and an activist for women's rights internationally. She's the author of Their Jihad, Not My Jihad, and when she spoke at Canada's Parliament, she received a standing ovation. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program, Raheel. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Zuhdi Jasser is the founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, former United States Navy Lieutenant Commander, nuclear cardiologist, past president of the Arizona Medical Association, and author of Battle for the Soul of Islam. That is just some of Zuhdi's CV. Dr. Jasser, it's always good speaking with you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me back, Roy. Appreciate it.
Raheel, let me begin with you. When Mr. Trudeau said what he said, how did you respond? What was your immediate reaction?
Well, absolutely outraged, embarrassed that I'm a Canadian and that my leader, my Prime Minister, would say something that is so irresponsible. So it's it's so in some ways it's so offensive to our citizens, to our Canadian citizens, and it ridicules the intelligence of our population when he makes a remark like that.
How's it playing in the United States, Judy? What's the reaction as the Trump administration reacted at all, and how some American media reacted?
Well, it's amazing how he has had a series of comments that have been so off the wall, as you and I have talked about, that it's almost they've become anesthetized to it. But this one especially should really point out one of the deep pathologies of denial, in that these aren't just a sort of mercenaries going to fight some generic war that are coming back. The jihadist element in Syria is not only fighting Assad, they are creating a caliphate. They believe that the West secular governments are their enemy. So it sort of is extremely educational that your prime minister and obviously his supporters aren't even aware that the ideology of the jihadists globally has declared war on Western democracy, and they really have no sense of the threat, and they look upon them as folks that should be brought back to lead the sort of the process of counter-radicalization, which I think his quote could be used from the pulpit of Baghdadi, who runs ISIS, which is exactly what he wants, which is to send Canadians back to supposedly under the guise of counter-radicalization actually end up plotting against those countries. And it's just, I hope Canadians look at what their prime minister said and say, you know what? This needs more attention, and our media, unfortunately, here in America has not paid attention to it.
What do you think, Zudi, the reaction and the response from the ISIS leadership and other individuals associated with ISIS is when they hear that the Canadian Prime Minister is making statements such as the one he made?
Their response is, thank you very much. You're working with us and helping us operationalize a lot of our jihadis into your society so that under the guise, and we saw this in Britain, there was organizations that were initially helping with the PREVENT program that ended up actually being radicalizers. You saw videos that were being done on documentaries of folks that ended up committing acts of terror in London that were thought to be counter-radicalizing, which were actually radicalizing. So I think ultimately the ISIS folks are not only laughing, but they're saying thank you for being agents of the jihad globally.
Raheel, the Canadian Muslim population, in a greater sense, what's the response to what the Prime Minister said?
Well, first of all, let's take a minute to just clearly understand, and this is, for all Canadians, as Zudi said, they must know that although, they must know what ISIS is. It's the epitome of pure evil. We're not talking, this is why good and evil are separated. So, what the remark that our Prime Minister has made, it's deceiving and fooling his voters. He's trying to please the Muslim vote bank, but he has to understand that, that ship has sailed. So for any responsible leader to even suggest that you can hug evil or that you can hug a terrorist or that there's even any ounce of good in these people is something that is bordering on ignorance. And we have to be very clear about why they're returning. They're not returning because they've given up or rejected the jihadist ideology and they suddenly love democracy. They're returning because they're getting a beating, they're getting hammered, and they're running away and they need a place to hide. So essentially, they should be tried for treason and they should pay for the crimes they have committed. So, any normal, sensible person, Muslim and non-Muslim, a Canadian citizen, understands this. Why our Prime Minister doesn't understand this is beyond me.
I'm also thinking that younger individuals, not necessarily always younger individuals, but younger individuals who may be drawn into the idea of supporting ISIS, who may be drawn into the idea of, if another opportunity avails itself, to travel overseas and join a death cult like ISIS. If they hear the Prime Minister of Canada say there's a positive future for someone who's done that and returned, wouldn't that just sound like an encouragement to them?
Well, absolutely. And as Zudi said, they're applauding. They're laughing all the way. Because here they have got the prime minister of a country, a Western country, when they have clearly declared war on the West. I mean, which part of this do people not understand? And that has not changed. You talked about that video years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That ideology remains. It has grown. They have declared war on the West, and they are not out to hug us. They are out to kill us. So, yes, it gives a very, very strong, very wrong message to those who are heading towards radicalization, and it takes away the years of work that we have done when we've been trying to expose the radical jihadist ideology. Look at what's happening in Iran today. There are thousands of people protesting to turf out the Islamist regime. Now, if young Mr. Trudeau continues unabashedly to support the Islamists and the cause of the ISIS, sooner or later, he'll also be turfed out by the voters, and he should be.
Yeah. If and perhaps this time, Western countries will stand up and stand with the people in Iran who are in the streets calling for democracy. In 2009, President Obama just put in his earplugs. Zudi, if Trudeau goes forward with this, and there's a criminal code that says if you went and joined ISIS, then you're in violation of the criminal code, and hopefully some court cases would be brought forward. But if he moves forward with this, and if in fact these ISIS individuals take on some leadership role, I find it hard to even say that, take on some leadership role, what do you think the ultimate outcome is going to be?
Well, I think ultimately you're going to see a few months, if not years later, that these individuals are going to help in destabilizing and actually committing acts of terrorism, and under the rubric of the endorsement of the Canadian government, which is just horrific. And, listen, we understand that it's complicated when you go to Syria. I've got family fighting Assad, so not everybody fighting Assad is ISIS. But when we're in the United States arresting people that are getting on a plane to go to Turkey, and the FBI says, you know what, you're being arrested because you're going to join ISIS. Or we just had a case finally in which a guy transferred $250 to help ISIS, and now he's going to serve at least 4, if not 5 years for doing that. When you do that on the one hand, and on the other hand say, well, if they come back after having served and possibly killed people, indoctrinated under jihadi doctrine, those folks need to be, as Raheel very aptly said, this is treason. They should not be just sort of brought back into the fold to help in any program, let alone being free to operate and radicalize others in our population.
Yeah, it's really mind-numbing. Thank you both so much for joining us, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, Raheel Rasta. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
It's the Roy Green Show on the Chorus Radio Network.